Hello, Steve. Daryl here. And, first things first, I am definitely not a Photoshop expert. I'm just someone who has used it a lot over the years. And here and there, I've learned a few things, I guess. But especially here recently with astrophotography, I'm quickly learning more and more about curves and levels and whatnot. And after that recent edit I performed on your file that I was so happy with the results of, and then seeing your comments about the red bias of your images, I decided to go and revisit the image again and see if I could kind of recreate my efforts and do so while capturing this video. Now, I don't know that I will get the exact same results, but maybe I'll get at least in the same general direction, and you can see some of what I did. Maybe it will present some ideas to you that you've not explored. And a lot of the credit does go to Nico Carver after seeing how he quite commonly would make levels adjustments with the mid-tone slider, which I've not typically used so much. And that made a big difference in some of the edits I've been working with. But also some masking and various other techniques. So first things first, I did not remember that your image actually did have a red overall tonal bias. I thought that had come out through a shift in the color temperatures that I had made. But in fact, as we see here, it does indeed have a reddish cast to it. So whether that's because of your modified that Canon RA with the IR sensor removed or what, I don't know. But anyway, I'm just going to start moving through here and try out some ideas. And as I said, maybe we'll get in the same general direction as my original edit, which I've got up here conveniently alongside us. I do have at least a layer progression of that file, but it doesn't detail the steps I perform from one layer to the next, other than in some cases we've got names on the layers. So after some basic edits in 32-bit mode, which probably were both levels and curves, I did a conversion, and this was the resulting 16-bit file, I'm pretty sure. And then I stepped through and I did some levels, some curves, made a copy of that result, then singularly edited that with additional layers, which that, I believe, kind of takes us back to something similar at first. Well, different enough. So apparently there was some initial benefit from those initial edits. So anyway, we get in here and we have that new layer. We perform more levels adjustments on it, which brightens it up. But then we attack it again with more curves to take it back down, bringing out the darks more. What I was particularly concerned about was trying to keep some of this feathery nebulosity out here at the extremes of Great Orion. I didn't want to wash that out into darkness, so I really tried to kind of keep my eye on that. And at the same time, I didn't really want to blow out the core of Great Orion here. So those were two of my key things I was watching out for. Once I made those curves adjustments, I made another flattened layer, and apparently I then started doing some other edits that gave us this much more saturated result. My guess is this is probably a camera raw application where I went in through the basic adjustments and added some saturation, maybe some contrast, took out a bit of the highlights, again still just trying to keep that core under control, and eventually we had this resulting layer. From that, I then duplicated it, made a few other changes, brightening up the body of Great Orion, and then applied a small mask or mask edit to just the core and remove the resulting burnout, you might call it, where the rest of the body had been exaggerated. That did the same thing to the core itself. In fact, let's see, we can probably see that. That's not the right thing to do. I'm not sure how to turn off the mask. Disable the mask. Okay. So it's just a very subtle change on the core. And then I performed maybe a few more edits and finally applied a Nik color effects filter called High Pass. I'm sorry, not High Pass. HDR like. So let's go back and revisit the original image. I've marked it off to where I cropped the original, and we'll go ahead and apply a crop to those lines. I just like to crop to basically get rid of some of the vignetting. I don't even worry about the vignette too much, you know, if I'm dealing with my own stuff, because I know I'm typically going to be cropping more to the DSO as my main subject. So I just kind of took that same approach with yours and cropped it to this level. And let's get it as full screen here as we can. That's good enough. And then I started attacking it with the levels. Now, at the 32-bit mode, we can't go into looking at the histogram yet. That appears to be a 16-bit image function. So all I could really do was go to the levels dialog, adding an adjustment layer for levels, which most of the, well, not most, but my most commonly used Photoshop options, I've got mapped to buttons over here along the right. So you may see me using them as often as instead of digging through the menu. But anyway, we're adding a level, so let's okay that. And looking at the properties dialog up here on the right, what I'm going to do is, if we've got any space to the left of the histogram, giving us a little bit of area to work on the shadows, I will bring that in to where the curve starts as best as I can visualize that small histogram. So a point of 3 there. And then this is kind of what Nico was showing. We'll move the midtone slider down to where the curve starts at from the right side, which is about right there. And don't be surprised yet by how it blows out the, whoops, I'm making a mistake here. I don't want to do that yet on the RGB curve. So let's put that back to 1. So I want my, as a matter of fact, I don't think I want to change anything on RGB yet. So let's go to red. Bring the darks down, the shadows, the midtones up. And there is a very, very faint trail of image data being shown here that I'm not sure if you can see in the video, probably not. But it's just like a little scattering of sand along the lowest intensity level there for red. So I'm not worried about the fact that we're losing anything there. It's going to be very minimal impacts on the image. The main thing is we bring the midtone in to the right point of the curve. And I do have it pretty much right where there's an increase of density. I might could actually go a little farther in, but I'm going to be that critical about it. So now let's go to the green channel. Do the same thing. Not much room here to work with on the left. 2 looks like a fair assessment. We'll go in a little further here on the right, the curve not being quite as wide. So that's 3.9. How did that compare? So another 0.8 further. And then we'll go to blue. And again, 2 is enough on the left. And at least 3.9 it looks like on blue, probably a little more. No, actually not. 3.8. Okay, so with that done, now we'll take a look at how the RGB curve is affected. And you can see the values there are distributed out quite a bit. But again, on the left-hand side, there is some empty space there, it appears, for the darks. So I'm going to take that pointer, the darks pointer, in to that first line just to the left side of it. Right there. And there's our resulting image for a levels application. So quite a bit of change from the original. It actually looks worse at the moment, but we're still going to be going after some darks and contrast changes and whatnot. And this is one of the reasons it's advantageous to do the adjustments by adjustment layers instead of just directly on the image. That way we can kind of easily undo them and check, turn them back on and off as need be to get a feel for how things are affected. So let's go ahead and proceed on with a curves adjustment. This just gives us a little more to play with. Still affecting the same kinds of values, I guess, as levels do, but in a, I'm not sure what you call it, a less linear fashion. And I don't want to do curves, I want to do a curves layer. Okay. So we see on our curves layer that it shows a big open area there again to the left. And I don't even know for a fact that the concept is the same here as we have with levels, but it is the approach I took. So I went ahead and I drug the blacks slider there in to the left of the curve. And now at this point, I think probably what I did was I used this hand tool to go and pick an area of the image to modify and just get a feel for how it looks. So what you're going to see is a point will appear on the line here representing wherever I click, and then as I move the cursor up or down, it will likewise increase or decrease the slope on the curve, limiting us, of course, on the bottom side, so we can only go so far with that. And I guess typically in the past I would have been reluctant to be tampering with values that are inside the I'm not sure what you'd call this, the color data areas of the graph, but I've since learned that clearly that does happen. So anyway, let's go ahead. What I want to do first is choose a dark area without too many stars around, and where we have the wispiness of the nebulosity kind of feathering out into the black. Part of what's going to happen here as I start sliding my cursor up or down the screen is it's going to move across some of those other colors or shadings. So if we see a sudden jump in the curve, it will be because we're picking up a different color tone that may not be quite as close in original value as to where we started. But we'll just see what happens. So let's go over here to the left, which appears to be right between those two sets of gray curves, and go down. And basically what I do is start changing the values there. Well, I see it's jumping because it's so finely picking out the colors, I guess, in the background. But I'm trying to get a good separation of the DSO from the background without losing some of the details again of that wispy, feathery nebulosity. To a certain point, I will allow some of that to disappear, but I like to leave enough of it to really give some character, you might say, to the DSO. Make it just a little farther, maybe. I think I'm going to stop right there. Because what I was looking at was this area right around here. I'm not sure if it'll show up in the video, but there is just a very faintly visible, gas cloud or whatever out around this more extreme area. Now, just something I remember having seen, I believe Peter Zelenka talked about this in one of his videos. He referred to kind of a basic S curve of the curves and how that is used pretty commonly to, you might say, find a nice balance between the contrast and saturation. So we've got, you might say, the start of the S here by what we just chose. So I'm going to go here to, about the midpoint of that slope and just click and put a point, leaving that there as an anchor. And now go to the midpoint of the area above that and drag it upwards. So we're, effectively drawing an S while watching our figure, our image. Let's see if I like anything I can do there. Not so much. So let's just drag that point off the corner so it's not in place, and we'll bring this midpoint down. It's anchored about there, and try the same thing. Not too much. I don't feel like I'm liking any of this as much as I had thought I might. That's not bad right there. Let's just, I'm actually just about dragging that point to the straight line diagonal. I'll release it at that point, and let's just turn this on and off to kind of check what's going on. Well, it's a big change, certainly. But let's get rid of that point. I'm not sure. There's some way to delete them, but I just delete them by dragging them off to the top right. I think I actually just like it better like that. I'm going to try one more thing here with the hand tool. I'm going to go in and click in the main body here of Great Orion, where I've got some of these magenta or pink tones, and let that be my color reference. So that took us pretty far down, and that's no good. That's really washing things out. Going the other direction darkens them some. Boy, that's not much change. Probably didn't really change things at all. I don't think that made much change. We've still got a fairly smooth shoulder on that curve. So let's just get rid of that point also. Matter of fact, I'll get rid of the midpoint that I was trying to set. So I'm just going to leave it at that initial adjustment there. And with that done, we'll go ahead and I'm not sure if there's going to be a benefit for this. I'm going to add a stamped copy of these layers above that top layer, and we'll edit that and preserve those individual curve and levels adjustments rather than flatten them. So that's what my add merged button here is. That actually adds a transparent layer and then stamps a merged copy to it, which Alt Control Shift N and followed by an E, still holding Alt Control Shift down will do. I'll do those here initially. So Control Alt Shift N. So that creates a transparent, a new transparent layer. And with Control Alt Shift still down, I'll hit the E key, the letter E. And that merges the three visible layers into the new layer. And it won't really affect anything, but I'll just turn off the other three as a reminder that they're no longer contributing to the image. Okay. So this one, I'll leave that this time as sort of a reference layer, I think. I'll call this the 16-bit conversion. And we'll do that very thing, image mode to 16 bits per channel without merging. If you don't merge, apparently the option to use exposure and gamma is the default that the process sticks with. So we can't really make any changes. And now you can see our expanded histogram becomes available to us. So I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'll call that the, well, I don't really need to call it anything. Let me just undo that. Because we're going to add another layer which will make the changes apparent what we're doing anyway. So we'll add another levels layer. Now we can reference our expanded histogram. And the things I want to do are darken the image with respect to the blue and green channels. The red already looks pretty closed up. So we will go to those. And I think I'll go ahead and pull down the midtones once again to where the data starts. So that intensifies our red. Now we'll go to the green. We'll bring in the darks and bring down the mids. And I'm kind of just going by the width of the curve here on the histogram. You'll see as I move down the midtones how the width of the green histogram spreads out wider than that of the red. So I don't know if there's a value in doing this, but I'm going to bring it in such that the green curve is roughly the same width as the red. So that would be right about there. And then I'll do the same with the blue channel. Now it looks like, according to the histogram, I feel like I've still got some open area there on the left of the red and green. But okay, so let's go to the blue. Bring in the darks. Right there. And we'll bring in the mid. Again, keeping the shape roughly the same as the green and red above it. Okay. Now that done, we'll go and look at the RGB. And it looks much like the one in the histogram panel. and our image overall looks quite a bit better. Let's turn that off for a moment. Yeah, much better. A little bit soft in contrast, but we'll keep working with that. So now let's go add our curves layer again. And I need to take a break for a second to get some water. I'll be back. Okay, continuing on. I don't recall for certain if I might have tried this. I don't believe it's really for this particular purpose, but I have a plugin called AstroFlat Pro that is used to, I believe I'm remembering correctly, it's used to generate a flat for stacked images that were done without making use of actual image flats in the process. And just playing around with it some, I had seen some applications with it where I liked the results I got from it. So I always like to at least explore it briefly, and that's what I'll do here. So the idea, what's it? Oh, okay. I'm forgetting one step here. So I do want to again create a new merged copy of the 3 visible layers. I'll turn them off now. And we will now duplicate that and apply AstroFlat. So the first thing I want to do is turn on what they call the enhanced preview. And in the instructions for it, I believe it said something to the effect of increasing smoothness until a DSO is seen, but stopping shy of where there is some blooming, I guess you'll call it, of the sky. I'm not quite sure really how to interpret that. And in this particular case, and we've got the DSO visible even with all settings down at 0. So one of the approaches I've taken has been to apply the smoothing as I watch how it affects the DSO, but then once the effect starts spreading away from it into the sky, I will back off. So that's roughly right in there, it seems. So I'm just going to call that a value of 10. So I'm going to back off to I think I'm not going to let it apply so much. Let's just do a little subtle smoothness. So a value of 4. Now the edge cleanup, I don't think it's going to really do anything. It appears to be affecting the stars some, reducing their, what I'll call their glow. And likewise, it is pulling in the glow of the core. But that's out there at an extreme edge cleanup. Otherwise, it's not doing a whole lot. I'm just going to go with the midpoint there. Let's go with 50. And as far as dark noise reduction, I don't like reducing noise unless I feel like I'm at a point where I just really have to, because it does start smoothing out details. But zooming in here, we can see some of the noise that, especially in this whiter area. So there's a little modeling of color. And if I can increase the noise reduction just enough to get rid of that mottling, I think it will smooth things out without too much impact on the detail. This is just a trial and error thing. I think I'll go with the value of 10 there. And we'll use those values to create a flat. So down here at the bottom, I'll select flat only and OK that. So it has now applied the flat to the layer 1 copy, which now we will subtract from the prior layer. And we get this result. So it does give me a somewhat interesting result in that we've got some of the feathery nebulosity or whatever still out there, and yet at the same time it's opened up some of the voids within the nebula. And I almost like that result. It's a little too strong, and it darkens things quite a bit. So now what I'm going to do, just to explore it, we're safely able to do so, is reduce the fill amount of that layer. And see if we can find kind of a happy compromise between the original layer and the filtered layer. So I kind of like that right there. This area right in here behind the core kind of gets opened up. It's hard to say if I really like that as much as I thought. I may like it better once I brighten things, so I think I'm just going to leave that for now. I mean, it's just an exercise anyway, just to give some ideas on the type of edits I give consideration to as I'm proceeding. So let's decide what to do next. I'll go ahead and label that layer as a astro flat. Now, one thing I will say about that astro flat, I don't remember if I applied that on the first edit I performed of your file or not, and I'm not exactly sure what that filter does insofar as if you were to try and mimic doing it yourself through manual Photoshop operations. One thing though, as I'm looking at what details I do see, I'm wondering if there's a way I could actually enhance how it is acting upon the layer 1 there, such that we still see kind of the same results, but with a little bit crisper and brighter details. So I think instead of a subtract, let's see what a difference does for us. So there's difference. Subtract. Very, very similar. I'm not sure if I'm seeing a difference. I think difference will result in blacks being generated when corresponding color tones are stacked above one another, whereas I believe a subtract produces a gray tone. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Let's see what else, what other layers might, or other blending options might do for us. Pin light, nothing. Color dodge is a little bit interesting, except I don't like how it burns out the core there. Screen seems to give more emphasis to those nebulosities. Lighten. Okay, let's try screen for a moment. Now this is still 57%. And we'll turn it on and off. So basically, it seems like screen is just brightening the overall image. That's why everything is becoming more visible. I'm going to stay with the subtraction. And let's, once again, let's just make a merged layer above that, a copied merged layer. So, continuing, what next? I think this is probably where I would want to explore camera raw. And with that, we'll just start off with the basics and see how things look with a slight temperature shift. I often do like going in a warm direction. I believe I mentioned that to you, thinking I had done that. Warm being more red versus cool, more blue. Which even cooler doesn't look bad. You know, if it might depend on what kind of colors you're ultimately after that you might like to see added into the image. I would say cooler is more natural, especially if you think about the coldness of outer space. But I kind of like the tonality of a warmer image. The brown tones kind of make me think of gases. So yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give it a slight bump toward a warm direction. 14 looks pretty good. Tint I usually don't even mess with. Let's just see what that does as we sweep across it. It just, you know, gives more emphasis to things. But I think I would rather not tint it, but boost the saturation. Exposure is pretty good, I'd say, but still worth exploring. And I mean, it starts washing out the colors, but it also seems to add a little bit of snappiness to the image. And it does need to be brightened a little, I feel like, so we just don't want to blow out the core. So I'm going to go with that. Well, another thing too is I can brighten this more, but then mask out the impact on the core. So if we have that, but want to go brighter, that's what I'll do. I'm going to go a little bit stronger on the exposure change. Let's look at our coma around the stars too. That's being affected a little. Okay, 0.8 I'll go with. Contrast, I think that helps start giving some definition to the nebulosities. 0.9 looks pretty good. Now highlights, I can tone down the stars some by pulling back on those. And that also keeps the core under control. Shadows I don't usually do so much with. It kind of helps clean out the blackness of the sky, taking away some of the gray tones. I'll just leave them zeroed out. Whites. It's kind of confusing, whites versus highlights. I think what highlights takes off some of the specularity, but whites just kind of give you a little bit of a cleaner color. And they too can blow out things. So as we see here, I can kind of set. Okay, now if I take it too far, there is, I don't know what this is called. This is probably atmospheric behavior, I'm guessing. The kind of the vertical banding, I'm going to call it, the grain, the not even grain really. But here, if I overdo it, you can see that all of that sweeping rush of color across the image. I do like some of the effects I'm getting if I really kind of kick up the whites. So I'm going to do that a fair amount. I'm going to go with 40, but then I will tone it down on the core later again. The blacks. I go up in the whites and down in the blacks, that gives us a little more contrast. Which also gives you a bit of a sort of a added sense of sharpness. I feel like this is looking pretty good. I'm going to stick with 14 there. And then texture, I never have messed with that. Let's see what it does. Oh yeah, okay, that actually, it adds a sense of crispness to our stars. And actually, I guess even to the DSO. So simply because I don't use that typically, I am going to use it this time. Just see if that, how we like the end result. And I do like using dehaze. I like how that kind of removes some of the stuff in the sky. Just sort of the fogginess, it helps remove some of that. But then in turn, kick up the clarity a little. And finally, we'll give it a saturation boost. Just get some intensity into those colors. Now this will affect the coma around the stars some, I believe. Add a bit of vibrance. Not real fond of what I'm seeing here below this, what I call the helmet of Great Orion. Some of that added texture of the stuff around that, but at the same time I do like it a bit. So I'm going to go with that. So that's our basic changes. Now our detail. Let's zoom in and see how we're doing with noise. And this image looks quite clean of noise. I think that's reflective of your imaging and exposures. But on this, in these dark tones, you can see just a little bit of different reds and greens. So I like to give just enough color reduction to kind of blend that out to more of a singular tone, sort of a grayish tone. Doesn't take much. There's 10. And I don't like applying much much noise reduction. I think I mentioned that earlier when I was doing my Astro Flat, because too much noise reduction just makes things look a little too smooth and loose in detail. But I wonder, let's see if we go down here below the helmet, I wonder if it might help smooth out a little bit of these striations. I'm not sure what else to call them. Let's see if we crank it up. Yeah, see, we can smooth them out to an extreme. That would probably look horrible in reality. So I'm going to take it up just to where I see that they are starting to smooth out. I think I usually don't go over about 30, so that's what I've got there. And then sharpening, it's hard for me to ever know what to do. I think a lot of times I will set that almost to what I use for the noise reduction itself. So we'll just equalize those two values. And finally, for optics, if I've got any coma around my stars that I can work with to remove, I will do so. These actually look pretty darn clean. Let's go over here to this one though. So we'll select our sampling tool and click on that orangish glow. I think this is additive. I'm not real sure. It may just be that the little subtle hue differences are enough to affect everything, and it kind of misleads you. Okay, so it's reduced things a little bit. What I'm going to do here is down this green hue, I'm going to spread that wider, I think. It looks like we can go left just barely. But yeah, that pulls away some of the orange, which I like that. And the purple hue here on the right end of that has sort of almost an orange-like cast to me. I'm going to bring that in. I think that looks pretty good. And now we're done with our camera raw filter. So I will OK that. And there's our result, which I think that's looking pretty good. It's not quite so crazy as what I had for you the first time. But now let's put a mask on that and switch to a black brush. And go touch up our core some with a little bit larger brush. Our flow is set at 50%. That's probably pretty good. So I'm just going to hit these kind of highlight areas around the core. Hmm. I'm overdoing this. I wasn't expecting quite such a darkening. So let's undo that. Let's make this less hard. 10%, reduce the flow. 30%. And just a gentle touch. Okay, I think that looks pretty good like that. Now then, the next step I would probably want to try and tackle is a star reduction. And in particular, one thing I've been kind of playing around with lately that I enjoy trying at least is removing the stars from the Great Orion bulk so it just really kind of stands out on its own. That often gets involved into some very specific spot brush removal because I haven't really found a great way to do that yet, but I'm going to try. So let's again create a merge layer. So I'm going to label this one camera raw. Less core burnout. And we'll make a merge, or we'll make a duplicate copy of that. Now, is that simply a duplicate? Will that do it? I don't know if this copies a mask. It does, okay. So let's undo that, and I think it just merged. Add. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to call this star reduction. Duplicate that again. I'm just using that as something to work with. Turn off my other layers as a reminder. And go to our selected color range. Choose highlights, grayscale we've got. Adjust the values until I just see a pretty good choice of stars out there being grabbed. So really, that's what I'm going to do first is a star reduction. Yeah, about like so. And I don't know the total effects that we're going to get on, again, the main body of Great Orion. So I'm going to select my lasso tool and Alt draw around that to exclude pretty much what's selected here inside of Great Orion. And I'm going to revisit those specifically later. Likewise around what I call the helmet. And also we've got a few key stars here that I like to leave them a little more pronounced. So I will mask them out, or exclude them from the selection. The ones that are contributing really to these nebulosities and such around Running Man. We'll go and get both of those. And the larger ones here. Take out too many stars and stuff, it just starts losing the sense of reality otherwise, I think. That's pretty good. Well, let's see. These two over here, I like. The ones that create a big enough little glow around them, I like leaving in place. I think they contribute to a sense of more key stars around these DSOs. Even these out here. I'm assuming this is easily seen in the video. I don't know. Yeah, we'll even take it farther. You know, this is all just a matter of personal taste and preference. Just going for the bigger guys. Maybe little sisters nearby. I think I'll leave that little strip also. Oops. Okay. So that done, now we will expand what is selected. Modify, select, modify, expand by about, let's go with 5. Zoom in on that and see how that looks. Pretty good. It looks like most of these areas have enough space around them. Tell you what, let's go on out just a little more. Expand them by 2 more pixels. Yeah, that's good. And now we will feather that. I'm using some techniques here that I've seen Peter Zelenka do. I've liked his results. And the first time I saw him talk about this, he was going with a feather that was half the radius of the expansion. So I had what, 7 here. I'm not going to go with quite that much feathering, 3.5. I'm going to stick. Let's go with about what, 2.7. And now we'll do a Control H to hide the selected areas and apply a noise median filter. And that's really cut out things a lot at 7 pixels. And before I do that, let me get more of the image here in view. Okay. Noise median. So obviously way too much there. That is not realistic. Reduce the radius. That brings more stars into view as just little specks. That's kind of interesting. That's about the least application of this filter I've ever used as far as the size of pixels, but I think I like that result. Let's go ahead and apply that. And without doing anything else yet, we can go to the Edit Fade Median, and this reduces the extent to which that filter is applied. It's kind of like doing a edit on the layer itself. So if it's 100% opacity, that means it's maximum application, and 0 opacity means it's no application of the filter. So let's just go for mid-range. Turn that off. Whoops. So that's making very little difference. It doesn't erase our stars, it just shrinks them quite a lot. Let's go to 3/4, 75%. Let's see, try again. Okay, so there's 100%. I think I'm actually wanting it at the lower end. I want to see the stars just a little better than I was when I washed them out, but just not quite as bright. So instead of where I was thinking 75%, really I was thinking more 25 is the end I wanted to be at. Okay. So with it turned off, with the fade turned off, that's maximum removal of the stars, versus turn back on a little. Let's take it on up a little bit more, 32. Okay, I think I like that. So we'll do okay. Before we do that even, let's just see what, again, our layer options do. Just kind of stepping down through these. Most of them have bad effects. Pin light is okay. But it looks like really the best result. Let's see, exclusion, that's, or difference. Not really sure that I'm seeing any benefit to that, so let's just go back to normal and we'll okay that. Now if we turn that off, we can compare it to the prior layer. Well, that really, we did not change things as much to the extent that I was thinking. Well, that was kind of wasted effort. I didn't really have quite so many stars to begin with as I was thinking. But I do feel like I want less. So I'm going to repeat that exercise. Let's go back to where we had our selection here. Right, okay, so here we had our feathering. So I should be able to do a Control H to see, yeah, there's our selection. We apply the median filter, which removes so many of them. Okay it. Return to our fade. Okay, so 50%. That does turn the stars down some. We still have the density, it seems like, out there, but they're just like little tiny specks. 67%. Hmm. 85. Okay, I guess I'm still using the bulk of the median filter. Let's just go with 75%. And turn on and off the layers of comparison. Yeah, that reduces the stars, not in quantity but in density. Now I want to go in and visit Great Orion. I want to duplicate that layer. Great Orion star removal. I'm going to leave some around the fringes there. If this idea even works at all, I'll leave some right out there in the fringe of the outer edges of the nebulosity, but here more within the body of it, I'm going to try and capture most of the stars. We'll leave there in the opaque areas, or not opaque, but the black areas. We're going to leave some stars kind of shining through. And likewise, we'll add on with a Shift plus the helmet. Leaving once again in these black areas, we're leaving stars there as if they're shining through the gases. And I'm going to feather that. It's already feathered, 6.5 pixels, so I guess that's okay. Just to not lose that selection, I'm going to save it. I'll just simply name it my A selection. Now, I want to just try this and see if it works. It's an idea I've had about selecting stars. We'll select the color range within that selection. What am I saying here? Maybe I'm saying this right. Reduce the fuzziness. So that excludes most of the core. If we tighten the range down, that starts getting rid of more and more of the core, which is pretty much what I'm after. There we go. So we're getting down to what would have seemed to be just the stars. And we'll do an OK of that. it's only getting the larger stars, not these smaller specks. Let's go ahead and try this anyway. We'll expand that by 4 pixels. That might be a bit much, but for what I'm curious to try, it may be necessary. And then we'll filter this. So this is similar to how I reduced the stars earlier. Select modify filter. So we expanded by 4. Let's reduce these by 2 on the feather. These larger ones, I can already tell this idea may not work out. Let's undo the feather. So I'll just simply back up a step. And now what I'm going to do is a content aware fill. I want to see if it will replace all of these selected stars. Let me turn off the marching ants. I want to see if it will smartly fill in those stars with the adjacent color data and just make them seem to disappear. So we go to Edit, Fill, Content Aware is selected, and OK that. And that did clean it up pretty nicely, except for the larger stars. I see a few other spots kind of straggling behind. So let's back up once again. We had our expansion. Let's go ahead and expand it further. So we had 4. We'll give it 2 more. And let's go, well, heck, let's double that. Expand it 2 more yet. And then feather that down, not quite half. So we've got 8 pixels total expansion, and we'll filter it, we'll feather it down by 3. And hide that, and let's see what our content aware fill now looks like. Okay, I actually chose a different option there. So we can go to Edit Fill, and it doesn't do any kind of masking. But if you select the Content Aware Fill option directly from the Edit menu, it does give us a mask that we can further edit. Okay, this is an interesting idea. It may be a way I can add in even the smaller pixels. So let's see if we can do this. I want to shrink. I need to shrink my brush size somehow here. I wonder how to do that. Normally a right click would give me that choice. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that doesn't work at all, doing that. So I definitely need to shrink my brush. Oh, here we go. Size up here at the top. Let's shrink that way down. Click on each of these stars. So this is similar to a spot sampling tool. or spotting brush rather. A little bit easier to see because we've got that contrasty green to work with. Let's see how that looks. That worked pretty well. That one big star is still getting too big of a spot put on it. And if I zoom in, I see those others too. Back up. Oh, okay, that actually was applied as a layer. I wonder what would happen if we applied a Gaussian blur on that. It ruins it. So we don't want to do that. How about if this will bring some stars back in, but let's just see what happens as we vary the extent of the fill. Okay, so overall I would say this, the idea of the content aware fill did not work quite as well as I had hoped. It does leave spots behind. Let's back up some and reselect content aware fill. Well, let's see. You know, actually, even that one bright star is kind of more part of that background. Let's turn on our marching ants. And we'll exclude that big star. Alt select it out of the picture. And these others, even these here in the black area could be removed. And maybe those right there. This may look a little more natural than that one. I'm really trying to avoid those spots. So let's expand the selections even larger. Another 2. I'm not going to worry about the filter. Let's see how this looks for a content aware fill. And I'm not going to worry about that mask modification I was doing either. I'm just going to do it directly through the fill option. And I feel like that looks pretty darn good. Yeah, I like that. Not so many removed that it looks fake, and yet it still cleans things up more. Wow, we're running on 1 hour and 20 minutes for this video. These smaller ones in there, not so worried about. Even that we could try cleaning up with a dust removal filter. So let's just duplicate the layer once more. Dust and scratches. And we'll select more just this kind of colored area. Hide that. I don't like seeing my marching ants when I'm doing stuff like this. And we'll go to filter, noise, dust and scratches. We don't want it too strong or it smooths out the nebulosity more than we would want. So we'll just start tiny. And 5 is just enough to take it out. Got a few down here lingering in the lower areas. Oh, that's 6, okay. And those others were left behind because I apparently did not have them selected. Okay, so that's fine. And threshold, not really even factoring in there. So let's okay that. And we'll do just a little bit of spot cleanup. Shrink our brush. Got that one. I need it to be harder. Oh, we've still got our selection on, so we'll turn that off with a Control D. Just hit these with the spot healing tool. Maybe right over there on the helmet. Anything else we want? Yeah, there's a dirty one that didn't clean up so well. Otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. Okay, I think we've just about got this where I'm ready to wrap it up. What could I do to sharpen things? Well, let's actually try a sharpening. Got a high pass filter I like to apply. Let's just try it outright. What did that do? Using a 40% reduction on the filter. Hardly noticeable. Let's bump it on up to 80%. I may have to reset my filter constraints. Yeah, subtle differences. Okay, so we will step back on that to high pass. Right before the high pass filter is applied, we've just simply got a duplicate layer. So now we will go to the other high pass. And yeah, that was a very small setting, 4.6 pixels. So increase that to get a little more detail showing up in this kind of high key effect. The resolution of the image being what it was, it just takes a little more pixels to grab the details. I think 12.5 looks pretty good. And with that done, we'll try the hard light filter. That's pretty strong. Oh, there's a satellite trail or something coming right down through there. But that's an extreme hardening or hard filtering. So let's change that to 50%. And I think I want to isolate the sharpening to the nebula or nebulas. So we're going to keep it up there kind of high at 42%, but put a mask on it. Go to our black brush again. Make it a pretty good size one so it's easier to work with. Hardness. Yeah, 75%. It can be even bigger than that. Nice and big, so I can just sweep it around the picture. And where's our flow control? Got different options going on up here. Why is that? I don't know. It's not drawing on it. Oh, I didn't grab the brush. I grabbed the spot healing tool. That's what happened. There we go. Hardness 50. Now let's go ahead and give it a little bit stronger hardness. Flow of about 80% maybe. $75. And we'll just get out here and hit the outer fringes. I'm not going over where I've got these larger stars. I kind of want to keep them a little bit sharper in the image. I like that pretty well. What's our mask look like? Now let's just go ahead and get these outer edges. Okay. So that sharpening filter does seem to have increased the noise a bit in the image, but not an objectionable amount, I don't think. I think I'd still kind of like to see a little stronger saturation of the colors, though. So let's try it. Let's make another merged copy and just directly go into the adjustments for hue and saturation and bump saturation up some. That's pretty strong. Let's try that. What's that look like? So our fringed nebulosity still doesn't show up all that much. I don't know if that's a bad thing. I wouldn't mind if the sky still was a little darker. Let me try putting some curves on there and we'll see what that does. Go to the hand tool, select out here in the darkness, bring it down. Boy, that's a subtle change. Let's try that. And I'll go down here into the nebulosity of the running man. And we'll brighten that a little. So that brightens both nebula some. It starts bringing the heat up on the core, but it looks pretty soft and dispersed, so I don't really mind that too much. And we've still got these striations that I'm not real keen on, particularly this one, which appears to be a satellite trail that did not get eliminated from the stack. So once again, oops, did I change something there? I'm not sure. Yeah, I had, oh, apparently undid my curve layer. So I see this, I'm guessing a satellite trail coming down through here. Let's just go to our polygonal lasso tool, so if we can select that. Oops. Hide that. And let's just try the content aware fill for that fix. Oops, I should be able to do that on the earlier layer prior to the curves. It didn't touch it. Interesting. Oh, there it did. It was just slow, but not in the way that we want. Okay, let's undo that. And go ahead and make another merge layer. Let's see. Above that. And we'll just use our spot healing tool. That pretty well got rid of it. It was a lot easier to do it that way. Okay. Spot healed. satellite. And to that, just for grins, I'm going to try and apply a Nik color effects just to see what it does to the image. Hour and 36 minutes on this edit. So Nik Color Effects Pro has all these canned filters. They call recipes, which are combinations of filters that have been developed and created by folks, just getting different results. Oh, let's see what Clarity Bump does for us. That punched it up quite a bit. Burned out the core. And see, again, now I can go in and take that out. But let's go ahead and explore some others first. The high pass, or HDR like, I've liked it pretty well. That looks better. See, it didn't really burn out that core so much. Color tones came down on those somewhat orangish hues. 30% saturation on it. If we turn that back up to more, we get that result. Change the contrast level to blacken up the sky a little more. Kind of starts giving a little bit more of an artsy effect, I think. Let's detail extractors at 36%. Let's take that down to 0 to see what it's doing. Whereas fully cranked up, it's interesting results that are garbage. It's almost like a gradient exterminator in reverse. So 36 is where they had it. Now that I see what it's doing, though, it does look like it's introducing sort of a vignetting effect out here at the edges. Brilliance and warmth. That's probably affecting our colors. It's also bringing in some tint on the coma of the stars. Not so sure I like that, but again, I can gently undo that with from the mask. Perceptual saturation. That sets it on fire. I think they had that around 15 before I tweaked it. So that kind of mutes the saturation in a way. I'm just going to go with that. Not saying I like it the best necessarily, but it's not bad. And let it finish applying here. Color Effects Pro. Now we're going to turn a mask on that. Black brush, again reselected. Shrink it down. Soften it. Reduce the flow. Sweep around this star. I'm not sure if that lessened the coma any or not. That's weird. Why is it? Something is stuck. I've seen this problem before. It's like after I apply the Nik color effects, we're actually zooming the image. If you look down here or in the title, but Photoshop is not responding, so it's probably a glitch with this old copy of Nik color effects that I have. So it's showing the brush was applied. Let's take it back to the layer mask. And I'm going to do a save at this point. Yeah, let it save the layers. It's going to take a minute. It's going to be a big file. Okay, there's a save. Now, it's still acting up, so let's close the file. I'll close both of them. Okay. Let's save it as a new file. Let's close it and reopen. Hopefully that will resolve whatever it was that Nik Effects messed up. Yeah, so we're now zooming correctly. And we've got our black brush selected. We're on the mask. That actually did not even change things too much. Yeah, not having much effect. Now that star there inside the nebula looks kind of weird. So we'll just click over it. That helped. So our stars look a little harsh with their comas. So I'll click around the bigger ones there. Maybe not really all that bad. I don't know. They're almost a little too perfectly round, but I don't like the way that looks either. Let's turn off the mask. So the Nik effects did impact the stars there. Okay, well we can work with that easily enough. We can paint out that area. Go with a hard brush and just we'll let Nik Effects be doing its thing primarily on the main nebula. Okay, I'm going to call that good. The coma around the stars, still a little stronger than I like, but I think that's a pretty nice result from where we started. Where did we start? Can't see that now, not anymore. Okay, let's save that and I will stop this video.